Assalamu alaikum. Welcome again, third medical students in the pathology of digestive system. Small and large intestine. First, developmental anomalies of small and large intestine. To start with developmental anomalies of small intestine, and this include atresia or stenosis, duplication, Nichols diverticulum, and omphalocele. Atresia or stenosis means intestinal stricture, means narrowing in the lumen of the intestine, while طبعا segment of the intestine, not all intestine, mostly segment of intestine containing a narrow lumen, okay, or intestinal stricture. While in case of intestinal atresia, there is a complete failure of intestinal lumen development. This has three grades. Grade 1, there is only means diaphragm-like between two segments of intestine. Failure of lumen development in a small segment of intestine. While in grade 2, there is a segment of intestine appears to be cord-like. In grade 3, there is a thread-like appearance of the intestinal segment, means very narrow segment of intestine or very thin segment of intestine. Yes. Intestinal duplication, as you see here, this is the normal pathway of intestine, while here is a sac-like, it is blind, either continue or discontinued with intestinal lumen, mostly asymptomatic, so it is known as intestinal duplication. Yes, Nichols diverticulum هو الفيلر of result from failure of complete involution of the omphalomysenteric duct, with the resultant a remnant tubular or saccular or a tubular piece about 5 to 6 centimeter. This may become infected and causing intestinal infection. Omphalocele, there is a defect in the periumbilical abdominal wall. Okay, يعني يكون الابdominal wall بالمنطقة داير مدار الامبلايكس very thin, okay, forming a sac-like into which the intestine herniate. يعني it's similar, it appears to be hernia. واضح تكون في thin piece of abdominal wall فتسوي sac-like وبعدين الintestine يصير بها protrusion into this. This is a congenital anomaly known as the omphalocele. The developmental anomalies in the large intestine, the two most important is the malrotation. Malrotation هذا هو inappropriate positioning of the segments of the large intestine. Inappropriate arrangement of the segments of the large intestine. فمثلا ممكن انه السيكم، هنا المثال اللي قايلين السيكم ممكن انه تلقاه بالليفت upper quadrant of the abdominal cavity اللي هو instead of المفروض وين يكون بالرايت lower quadrant of the abdominal cavity. Hirschsprung disease, the second one is the Hirschsprung disease. هذا هو failure of the caudate migration to or along the alimentary tract to reach the anus. In normal instances, the caudate migration of neural crest derived cells migrate along the alimentary tract to reach the anus and innervate all the segments of the intestine. In here, in Hirschsprung disease, there is a failure. The caudate migration will arrested in certain point before it's reaching to the anus. leaving a segment of large intestine from which they are arrested, from the site in which they are arrested into the anus without any innervation. Okay, this will produce a paralysis of this segment of intestine. يعني for example, neural crest in this example arrested near the sigmoid colon, near the portion of the sigmoid colon. Hence the segment from this, or the intestine, large intestine, from this side to the anus is paralyzed. This will produce a functional obstruction with resultant accumulation of the ingesta on this side of the colon. This is known as the congenital megacolon. Congenital megacolon. Okay, because it results in dilation of the colonic segment prior to the site of obstruction. That's all about the congenital anomalies of the small and large intestine. Vascular disorders. Ischemic bowel disease. احنا previously صنفنا الintestine from the organs which is hard to develop an infarct. Why? Because it's supplied by three major trunks. These are the celiac, superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. So the intestinal ischemia or infarction requires an obstruction of all the three supplies, or sometimes at least one of the three major trunks. تمام؟ فأحيانا يكون الobstruction in one of the bifurcations or one of the branches of the celiac, of superior, of inferior mesenteric. So according to the degree of obstruction, it means the degree of obstruction of the branch or main trunk or three main trunks يعني هذولي يعني depends on which side or which trunk is obstructed, which branch is obstructed. So according to the degree of obstruction, the clinical impact of this obstruction will depend on. فإذا كان عندنا for example one of the branches of celiac superior or inferior, واحد من البرانش مالته هذا البرانش يغذي من فرضا يغذي only الميوكوزا, it will result in a mucosal infarction of the intestine. فهذا الكلينيكال infarction مالته شنو راح يصير؟ عندك ischemic change or infarction in the mucosa of the intestine. وسوات لأنه الميوكوزا is highly regenerable epithelium مثل ما قلنا, consisting of highly regenerable epithelium, so it will associate with a transient period of colic and then regeneration of the intestinal mucosa and everything will be alright. بينما إذا كان عندنا major trunk or major branch that supply the mucosa and submucosa, it will result in what we call it the mural infarction, لأن هذا البرانش الآن راح يغذين حاليا إذا انغلق اللي هو يغذينا الميوكوزا and submucosa, فراح يصير الانفاركشن نسميه mural involving mucosa and submucosa. هذه associated with more severe colic status, okay, extend for long duration. الكونسيكونس مالتها انه يصير mucosal regeneration and submucosal repair. يعني شنو repair؟ يعني fibrosis, healing by deposition of collagen because the submucosa is non-regenerable epithelium. إذن الميورال infarction أيضا يكون of moderate clinical impact characterized by يعني outcome مالتها, I mean the outcome أنه يصير عندنا regeneration of the mucosa and healing of the submucosa by deposition of collagen and everything will be alright. أما إذا one of the major trunks become obstructed, so it will result in a transmural infarction or ischemia. واضح؟ الترانسmural هو very serious and have a devastating clinical impact. ليش؟ لأنه خلص الآن بعد ال 3 layers or ال 4 layers of the intestinal wall صار بيها infarction, and as you know the intestinal lumen is flushed with bacteria. Some of them is opportunistic, so it will convert into pathogenic and they start to invade the wall of the intestine, okay, result in development of intestinal gangrene. لأنه خلاص الآن عندنا dead segment of the intestinal wall وصار لها bacterial invasion, وهو هذا الجنجرين اللي أخذناه بالكورس الأول اللي هو الانفيجن of the clostridia, والclostridia موجودة بالintestine. This will result in intestinal rupture. يعني هذا الجنجرين segment راح يصير بها rupture because of it will distended by gases produced by the bacterial growth. So distension, the thin wall segment of the intestinal wall will get rupture, and then the intestinal components will leak into the peritoneum with its component of bacteria. This will result in diffuse peritonitis, state of diffuse peritonitis, so associated with generalized area of inflammation and then septic shock. So intestinal gangrene is one of the urgent states. The predisposing conditions for the obstruction of the trunks is either arterial thrombosis or arterial embolism, or venous thrombosis, or sometimes non-occlusive ischemia. Each of them have its underlying causes. مثلا بالarterial thrombosis أحيانا يصير نتيجة systemic vasculitis or oral contraceptive usage. أما بالarterial embolism فأحيانا يكون نتيجة dislodge from the cardiac vegetations. Venous thrombosis, hypercoagulability وهكذا. Non-occlusive ischemia in case of shock, mostly occur in case of shock. وإحنا عرفنا الشوك سابقا على أنه هي cardiovascular collapsation. Collapsation means there is a collapse of the blood vessel with reduction in the nourishment of the organs. واضح؟ فإذا صارت هذه الحالة بالintestine it will result in reduce of blood flow and then intestinal wall ischemia. أحيانا miscellaneous like radiation exposure, valvular stricture, internal or external hernia. ومن يصير عندنا herniation أحيانا يصير during the herniation strangulation. ليش strangulation؟ لأنه الهرنيال رينج راح يكون صغير فتفوت الانتستين من عنده وتتجمع برا, وبالتالي it will be difficult to return again to the abdominal cavity, so it will undergo incarceration and then strangulation تختنق, وبالتالي ينقطع البلد supply and the venous drainage from the protruded segment, القطعة اللي طلعت برا الهرنيال رينج وصارت يعني تحت الابدومينال وول دايركتلي, فراح تكون strangulated وينقطع عنها الارتيريال سبلاي والفينوس درينج and hence there will be an intestinal gangrene. زين, حكينا عن كل هذولي. ندخل بالكيس الثانية اللي هي angiodysplasia. Angiodysplasia is a case result from tertious dilation of the submucosal and the mucosal blood vessels, يعني area of containing a dilated vasculature. هذا dilated vasculature will protrude into the lumen, okay. Mostly occur in the cecum and right colon, usually only after the 6th decade of the life. They are prone to rupture. هذه الcomplications مالتها ممكن ان هذا مو صاير بها protrusion into the lumen, ممكن انها تسوي rupture و bleeding. احيانا السيفيريتي اوف bleeding ما تكون كلش يعني serious بحيث تؤدي الى الهايبوفوليميا, لا, بس يكون البليدنج minimum, يعني oozing of blood شوية, okay, but chronic blood loss. This will result in iron deficiency anemia. These lesions sometimes are part of systemic disorders such as the hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. هذه هي حالة الانجيوديسبليجيا. جاي تشوفون هذه dilated intermucosal and submucosal veins. This will result in rupture and chronic intermittent hemorrhage. Okay. hemorrhoids الحالة الثالثة الهيمورويدز. زين الهيمورويدز هذه هي عبارة عن variceal dilations of the anal and perianal submucosal venous plexus. واضح؟ ليش تصير هذه؟ due to increase venous pressure in the hemorrhoidal plexuses. ايش وقت يصير؟ في حالات الستريننج at stool نتيجة الكونستيبيشن. هذه واحدة. يعني مثلا ايش وقت يصير عندنا الانكريز in the vascular pressure of the hemorrhoidal plexus؟ من يكون عندنا constipation chronic constipation مو لمرة واحدة ومرتين لا chronic constipation وبالتالي أكيد راح يصير عندنا continuous straining in order to يعني during the defecation process straining during the defecation process. هذا will increase the vascular pressure of the hemorrhoidal venous plexus. Second venous stasis. venous stasis هذا mostly يصير بالبريجنانسي اللي هي تكون بها hemorrhoids. الهيمورويدز في حالات البريجنانسي mostly هي mild and reversible وأحيانا resulting from the cirrhosis of the liver because the hemorrhoidal plexus is one of the alternative pathway or sharing pathways between the portal and systemic circulation. So the shunting of blood from the impeded portal flow راح يكون back flow from the vessels where the portal and systemic vasculature get sharing. The types of hemorrhoids according to the distribution or according to the involvement of which venous plexus by the increase intravascular pressure. فإذا كانت above the anorectal line احنا ما عندنا هذا اللاين اللي هو يقسم لنا الريكتم عن الأنس اللي يصير بيه شيفتنج مثل ما يصير بالانتستين عفوا مثل ما يصير ما بين الاسوفاجس والاستومك ما يصير عندنا شيفتنج of the epithelium from squamous into the columinal and the intestine. شو نسميه ذاك؟ نسميه esophagogastric junction. هنا عندنا ريكتا انال جنكشن اللي ايضا يرجع يصير بيه نفس الشيفتنج ما بين الكوليومينال epithelium and the rectum and the squamous epithelium in the anal canal. اوكي هذا نسميه الانوريكتال لاين. فالهيمورويدال plexus هي يا اما superior to the anorectal line or inferior to the anorectal line. فاذا صارت superior معناتها هذه نسميها internal hemorrhoids. اما اذا صارت inferior hemorrhoidal plexus اللي هي جوا الانوريكتال لاين راح تصير اكيد external hemorrhoids. اكيد راح تصير external hemorrhoids. المشكلة في هذول هو الكومبليكيشنز مالتهم لانه هي dilated وراح يصير بها venous stasis. اذا اكيد it is liable for a thrombosis and convert into very painful condition. واحيانا الانترنال hemorrhoidal plexus عفوا خلي نكمل ويا الاكسترنال. احيانا الاكسترنال يصير بها rupture and then associate with bleeding. منين يصير عندنا الرابتشر؟ من التروما during defecation. دائما يصير بها تروما وهي thin walled فشي يصير bleeding. واحيانا هذه الانترنال hemorrhoids ايضا يعني تندفع الى خارج اثناء الديفيكيشن ويصير لها entrapment by the anal ring by the anal sphincter. يعني it will captured by the anal sphincter. فمن يصير لها capturing هنا وتنحصر الانال يعني من تندفع ويا الديفيكيشن وبعدين يصير لها entrapment by the anal sphincter. شنو اللي راح يصير؟ راح يصير strangulation وبالتالي ايضا راح تكون inflamed وثرومبوزد وإديماتوس وكبيرة بالحجم. اوكي and it will be very painful like this case. ماشي. فهذه نسميها prolapsed internal hemorrhoid. prolapsed internal hemorrhoid also it is strangulated and entrapped by the anal ring. طبعا صاير بها thrombosis صاير بها rupture and bleeding. This is all that we have about the lecture 4.